Good morning, Boost. We're going to have an opportunity to spend a few candid moments together with just a few friends to talk a little bit about something that I think is incredibly important to me and some things that I wanted to share. But first off, I want to share, and this is a reminder, that you matter. And you'll hear that from me throughout this presentation, this reminder that you matter. And that too often during the course of our long and busy days, we forget that we matter to so many people. We make a difference to so many people. And along with the realization that we matter a lot in the life of children, even those children that are not our own, comes this sense of responsibility, somewhat daunting responsibility. So throughout the course of any one day, you can easily be reminded of the responsibilities and recognizing that we make decisions aligned with those responsibilities all day long that have a lasting impact. How we do what we do and when we do what we do matters relative to exemplary after-school programs. We, and I like to add me to the group, I think, touch lives and make a difference. I've had the great pleasure of visiting a few after-school sites in California, and each and every time I walk away in awe. And each and every time I remind myself how fantastic it is that our young people in the state of California have these life experiences. You matter, and you matter a lot. At the end of one of my work days, when I'm working hard to matter, I could easily find myself with shoulders slumped below my waist, which would be an unattractive image. And I'd have to stop and say, ugh. So there are two things that I do. And looking around the room thinking that I might be a little bit older than the average person here, I feel comfortable sharing these two things because I've been on the planet longer. These are stressful times. And I could enumerate all of the stressors. And you'd say, and so what else is new? So instead of enumerating those stressors, I'm more inclined to find strategies and answers and responses. First, I remind myself at the end of one of those days that I have to matter to me too. What I'm going to share isn't new at all, but I think it's important. One of the most powerful influences on your attitude, your personality, your existence on the planet is what you say to yourself. It's that little voice that you hear throughout the day that too often is tearing you down rather than building you up. It's that voice you hear in the mirror. Oh, this is not a good nose day. Oh, how many chins does a person need? Is that my butt hanging? That's that voice that you hear quite often. Your self-talk determines the majority of your emotional life. The words you choose to describe what is happening to you in your head and how you feel about what is going on around you will trigger emotions. And more often than not, you're controlling, and I know this is somewhat hard to imagine, but you're controlling whether or not you're going to be happy or sad. And if I'm in that driver's seat, I'm going to pick happy. It's not always easy, absolutely. And when you're looking for the good in every situation and in every person, including the person that cut me off the road this morning, it's not always easy. But the quality of your life will improve, and you will gain more control over the noise that's rolling around in your head when you change perhaps that voice. A little side story, my wife and I purchased a 26-foot RV not too long ago. We decided, why not? We'll be the RVers of the world. And we pull it with this monstrous diesel truck. And I have no experience pulling a trailer, no experience driving a macho, manly truck. But nevertheless, we did. We made the purchase. We're great. We went off to Bodega Bay to camp with friends. And everything is fine. I'm feeling comfortable, not really fully paying attention to how life is different when you're towing 8,000 pounds. And in trying to park this thing, I clipped a pole and tore the entire water system, sewage system off the bottom of my brand new RV. There were no license plates on it. I found at that moment that that inner voice in me had unkind things to say. There are even, and I'll let you use your imagination, a couple of choice words that I said to myself in my dismay, until I stopped to remember long enough that this has got to be my best friend, and that mistakes happen. And that's why we have insurance and no one died, and get a grip and have a good time. So changing that voice, changing that response and that reaction made a huge difference. We're constantly faced with challenges, difficulties, and problems each and every day. They are unavoidable and one of the inevitable parts of being a human being. But as you draw upon your internal resources to respond effectively to each challenge, you can grow and become a stronger person. Believe it or not, and this is not new news, some of these tests, these moments, these setbacks are precisely what have made you who you are. And to spend an incredible amount of time trying to avoid those setbacks is unrealistic. It's what you do and how you react after that setback. Much of your ability to succeed comes from the way you deal with life, and most importantly, the way you deal with yourself. Now, heads are nodding because perhaps I'm not saying anything that you've never heard of or never thought of, but this is a reminder, because too often we know this, we feel this, and I knew this and felt this and believed this, and in that moment, when I watched in my rearview mirror my trailer disassemble before my eyes, it was really hard to kind of get in touch with, it's okay, it's all right, Gordon. Your ability to develop and maintain a positive mental attitude, no matter what the situation may be, will play a critical role in your success and the success of every person you touch. You'll have to work with that inner voice because he or she is quite accustomed to being more critical than supportive. Anyone can be positive when the things are going well. It's only when the things sour and something happens that was unanticipated, unpredictable, and downright nasty that you find that your reaction matters most. One of the common characteristics of all high-achieving men and women is that they recognize the inevitability of temporary setbacks and disappointments. They accept them as normal and as a part of life. Now, I do a whole lot of work on my own to avoid them whenever possible, but I accept them. I recognize that they're real, and I continue to move forward. Optimistic people develop the habit of talking to themselves in constructive ways, and this will take practice. And sometimes I would suggest when you're having these conversations with yourself, it doesn't necessarily need to be aloud. You can have this conversation, but if you're sitting in a classroom or driving and really getting into this debate, want to be careful. I'm not suggesting that optimistic people live in a fantasy world where all is just dandy. When something we wanted and hoped for fails to materialize, we feel a temporary sense of disappointment and unhappiness, and it's real. We feel hurt, we feel disillusioned. We react just as though we've been punched in the emotional solar plexus. This is normal. I deal with our state's budget crisis in Sacramento often and have felt hit in the solar plex many times. And there are challenges. A person who is positive and optimistic is resilient and bounces back. And that's important. It's the bounce back. I was walking, I'm trying to get in shape, and I was walking up the stairs in my building a few days ago and got to the top after only 3 flights, huffing and puffing, thinking, Houston, we have a real big problem. But one of the programs in my division deals with health. And so that health person said, you know, Gordon, it's not so much that you're huffing and puffing. That shows that your body's working. It's how quickly you react after all that huffing and puffing. Then I got really worried. But it's how we react to what life throws at us. An optimistic person takes full control of his or her inner dialogue and counters any negative feelings by immediately reframing that event so that it appears positive in some way. And yes, there's a search. It all comes down to the way you talk to yourself on a daily basis. When a problem or difficulty comes up, you must learn to change your language from negative to positive. For example, I would avoid saying that, I would use the word situation instead of problem, because problem just sounds like something to deal with that's ugly. A situation is just something that, okay, I can handle that, I can deal with a situation. So if you were to work on this best friend that lives between your ears and remind her or him that you are on the same team, and remind her or him about the honesty factor, because that's important when you're having these self-conversations. Absolutely important. When I landed in Ontario, and I've often said to people who know me that I'm not really into material things, not terribly. And when I landed at Ontario Airport and I looked at the choices of cars, thinking I'm not really into material things, but the Chevy Cobalt or the Chevy Camaro, my inner voice said, you know, that's okay. But I had to be honest. And when I say I'm not really into appearance and material things, and yet I looked at my shirt, made sure I had the watch that matched this morning, I'm thinking, okay, maybe you are just a squidge. The second thing that I wanted to share with you after revisiting my relationship with me, I needed to revisit how I work and what I set out to accomplish at the beginning of each and every day. I had to work hard to reach some understandings about what I can and what I cannot do on a regular basis. I was a pretty high-strung high school principal for 6 years of my life, building a brand new high school. And each and every morning, I secretly taped that cape to my shoulders, marched out of my house, ready to do it all. That was exhausting. That was not realistic. I could not do it all. A high school principal makes a decision every 8 seconds. And the only job that I think that others have said is more stressful is a neurosurgeon with much better pay. So I recognized that that wasn't healthy for me or my family, no matter how much I considered each of those students one of my own. I had to learn the hard way. I mean, I once had hair. That I simply needed to commit to doing my best at every opportunity. Throughout the day, week, month, year, in this hectic environment known as education, I had to come to terms with the race and how I was going to win it. And I decided that I was going to win it by racing to do the best that I could do each and every day, and then sleep at night knowing that I did my best. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "Make the most of yourself, for that is all that there is of you." I like that. I'm going to repeat it. Make the most of yourself, for that is all there is of you. Abraham Lincoln said, "I do the very best I know how, the very best I can, and I mean to keep on doing so until the end." The great Oprah Winfrey, she'd like to hear me introduce that. She says, "Doing the best at this moment puts you in the best place for the next moment." With all the complexities that are part of your world, with all the situations thrown before you to solve and make better, simply focusing on doing your best matters. Sometimes we have to do some intensive self-talk to determine why we aren't giving our best at work, at home, at a healthier lifestyle. And that's that honest conversation with self, to come to terms with, I know what I need to do, I know what I'm not doing, I need to make some decisions. It's a very hard conversation to have, but when you make that conversation happen, it's life-changing. It is exhausting to give our best each and every day, but the rewards are many. It's true that your best is going to change from time to time. I'm just getting over a month of this virus that's been out there that other people have endured and suffered, and the coughing, and it was ugly. And so during that month, there were days when my best was hard to find. My best was getting up. And so, understandably, your best will change from time to time. But when you're focusing on doing your best and racing to do your best and committing to do your best. It's amazing how that voice that's yammering in your head changes and becomes incredibly supportive. At the end of the day, when you and your new best friend, that's the one residing between your ears, are reflecting, you might be able to enumerate not only that you did your best, but this next piece is incredibly important. When you enumerate how you might do better tomorrow, because we're always striving to do better. I know that we want to do our best at inspiring youth and inspiring learning and inspiring change. We need to be reminded that doing our best matters, even when it seems like the odds of making a difference are truly stacked against us. And we need to remind ourselves that we may not always win the race, but running our best lap is often our best. And that's a good thing. My last thought during this quiet and intimate time that we've had an opportunity to share together between good friends is that we can help each other to give our best. I'm constantly reminding the people in my building, and we're working on several initiatives that are so much alike, and yet they're on the 4th floor and I'm on the 6th floor, and we're doing this work and not talking to one another. That sometimes we have to agree to come together to find the best way to work together to do this important work. Working together can be productive if we meet to do our best and have that discussion. If you look around this room, you are not alone, and that is inspiring. The new information coming your way by means of Boost, as well as any reminders that I have shared or others will share today about that you already know, can be instrumental in helping you do your best. In the 31 years that I've been in the field of education, throughout the years I taught English and French and ESL, through the years of being a vice principal and writing out those suspension forms, to the years of being a principal and hiring staff and trying to build the best high school, I have yet to meet an adult who could stand before me and say, I just don't care and I just don't want to do my best. More often than not, they could say, I really care, I want to do this bang-up fantastic job, but I don't know how. Recognizing that the people in this room are a great source of support, great assistance to do this incredibly difficult work, and that is fantastic. You matter. Your personal commitment to racing to your best and that commitment to doing your best each and every day, in spite of the news, the volcano, the airfares, the taxes, in spite of that. Because we often spend an enormous amount of time thinking about what we can't do without ever awakening that voice inside to say, let's think about what we can do. It matters. It matters greatly. And for every child, every student that you come in contact with, you matter. I have my Facebook account, and I've got like 460 people on my Facebook account. And of those 460, 430 of them are former students. My oldest student, I was about 46 years old. And the greatest thing about being on Facebook, it's wild and wacky and fun, is that I get to hear from those students that are now neurosurgeons, that are now working well at UPS, that are now teachers, that had me in their lives at some point to influence, to offer, to give them a different vantage point, to encourage. And they thank me, and they remind me that I matter.